since I think we want to talk a lot about Farmamerica too, you can keep those answers a little bit shorter then. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, yeah. Okay. Okay. So since you've literally been involved in farming your whole life, I hear, you grew up on a farm, you were involved in 4-H and all these different things. Just tell me a little bit more about how you grew up and how some of those experiences made you even more passionate about farming.
Well, the fact that I was born in a family with 9 children, with a farm that was brought up through the Depression era, gives you a little feel for what was going on at that time. And during that time, Dad thought we have to get through this. We had 5 cows for each of the kids, so that's where we ended up with 45 cows. And as the kids left the farm, the cows left the farm. Dad had other things he was doing, so it was an interesting time. 4-H, FFA meant a lot to me. When Leonard Harkness, who was a state 4-H club leader, came back to Blue Earth County, wanted to start 4-H clubs, and he went to families, large families. So we were one of those families that started the Lakeside 4-H Club in Madison Lake, and so we were active in that organization. And then it got to high school, went into FFA, and became very interested in agriculture and where it was going. So my whole life has been geared towards passion for agriculture and doing pretty good for the development of agriculture.
So tell me how after high school, you kept developing that passion. You went off to college, you studied agriculture. Tell me some of the things that you really focused in on.
I'll tell you first that I met a young lady in 4-H that I married, and we married just before I went up to the University of Minnesota. And in fact, after our honeymoon, our next move was right up to the St. Paul campus. And it's been 62 years with the University of Minnesota. And so it was in agriculture all the way. And Farmamerica was part of that development.
So what did you study in college then?
I was in ag education. I got my bachelor's science degree in ag education. I have a master's in dairy husbandry and a PhD in anatomy and physiology and veterinary medicine. So it's all agriculturally related.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what agricultural education looked like back then, and some of the things that your courses covered.
Yeah, agricultural education was big time at that time of the life. I mean, it was very important to the development of the schools that had ag classes in them and a lot of activities. So it meant a general education in agriculture, so ag education. And many of the people in ag education could either stay in teaching or go out and work in other agriculture-related business, and that's still true today.
So tell me what you did.
Yeah, well, after I graduated from the University of Minnesota, I had an offer to go to Crookston as the animal scientist up there and teacher at the Northwest School of Agriculture, Crookston. This was 58, and so I went to Crookston at that particular time and taught classes there, did research work there, had a great time at Crookston. And then after 6 years there, had an opportunity to go several different directions, either to USDA or to an agricultural company in Michigan or down here to Waseca. And at that time I chose Waseca and came down as superintendent of the school and the experiment station here at Crookston. Waseca.
What made you choose Waseca?
Well, I chose it because it's within the county of our home farm over here, but the people of the area didn't know that. I'd been out of the area a long time, so they wondered who this guy was coming back to this area, So it took a little while for them to tie down the name Frederick with Fredericks in this area and over at Mankato and through that area. I I've got 110 first cousins on my dad's side, so you see there are a few around.
Okay. So tell me what you were first doing when you came to Waseca.
When I first came to Waseca, I came as an administrator. I was head of the experiment station, the Southern Experiment Station, and the School of Agriculture, the Southern School of Agriculture. So I actually was an administrator of those, and so it involved some teaching where I was interested and had some expertise in, and also involved the administration of those organizations, and involved still some research at that particular time. So, but it was all agriculturally related.
So, and as you were serving here in Waseca, your position, I mean, you moved to several different positions, and I know that, eventually became the U of M Waseca. Tell me a little bit about that transition and about how you went from, was it from chancellor to provost?
Well, it was the other way around, but it started as a Southern School of Agriculture, and the university was getting out. That was actually at a high school level, and the university was getting out of that type of education and moving to a 2-year technical college for agriculture. And so at that time, I was involved in that transition, and it was a very smooth transition from the School of Agriculture over to the college. And the school took its last class in 1969 and graduated that last class in 1973. The college took its first class in 1971, graduated in 1973. So the last class in the School of Ag was in 1973, first class from the college was 1973. So very smooth transfer. There was no reduction of numbers of students during that time. And very interesting programs.
And so you oversaw a lot of that transition then?
Right, I was involved right in the middle of it, so yeah. We've had about 1,000 students that graduated from the Southern School of Agriculture. We call them the Elite 1,000. We still have an active alumni association. We try to keep up with them, and they're very active in the area, and there are a lot of leadership positions. We also had about, I say, 20,000 that touched on the University of Minnesota, Waseca, that were here sometime or had some contact with it. Now, actual numbers maybe were closer to 14,000 or 15,000 in that area, but a lot of people. So there's a lot of people in this area, and you find them all over that. See, I went to college at Waseca, and they were head of the Farm Bureau organization or other agricultural organizations or companies in the area. So it's kind of gratifying to see what they've done and what they've accomplished.
So Waseca County does have a really strong ag community.
Very much so. And it's one of the reasons we came down to Waseca County, that we're going to pick an area in Waseca that's agriculture. Waseca is a place with its institutions, with the experiment station, with the college, with the businesses that are around the area here, and then with Farmamerica coming into the picture also.
So tell me a little bit about how Farmamerica did come into the picture.
Yeah, that's an interesting story, because that's when we came back to Waseca after being up at Crookston, and in 1976 was the 200th anniversary for the country, for the United States of America, and so it was the bicentennial year, and the Governor Perpich at that time, and the legislature wanted to do something special to commemorate that. And what they decided to do is to take the resources of Minnesota and to emphasize them and develop an interpretive center for each of those major resources. One of them being iron ore. If you knew Governor Perpich, he was from that area. Man, that just hit his nail right on the head. And then timber was another one, the Forest History Center. And then agriculture was the other, and main resource as far as resource development in the state was concerned. So that was the third one that came along. That was in 1976. Those decisions were made to develop those. It took until about 1978 to select where that site was going to be and to develop a proposal. The agriculture one, they put out a request for proposals. The state would provide $50,000 planning grant, and the organization had to come up with $50,000. So we had a group in Waseca here of very key agricultural leaders that were working on that planning document for that. And so while we were working on that planning document, there were people like Dean Curtis was on KDHL radio, Joe Eustace was with Pearson Seeds in the area here, and Roy and Marcy Lucken were farmers in this area, very successful farmers. And as the planning came along, it was decided that Joe Eustace was going to visit with Roy Lucken about providing the $50,000 match for the state, and to somewhat his surprise, and to the rest of the people's surprise, said, yeah, let's do it. And so he provided 40 acres of the land at that time. That was a $50,000 match that started the whole development here. This was all a nice, flat, great agricultural farm here where Farmamerica is developed. And then as the years went by, it continued to add 40 acres, 40 acres, 40 acres, until by gosh, sooner or later the whole 360 acres was in a life estate to Farmamerica. And Roy and Marcy Lucken had moved out to Big River, California as they retired, and lived off of those funds until he passed away this last year, and then it all became property of Farmamerica. So it's very interesting development. There was a lot of communities that did vie for having the Interpretive Center located there, but in the end, Farmamerica had the best proposal to move forward. We had a great master plan of it. I don't have a copy of it right here now, but the master plan showed that the key to the master plan was developing a time lane road that goes through Farmamerica. It's a 1-mile time lane road that all of these different things could come off of. And that was really the key that came together to tie the whole development of Farmamerica together with that time lane road. And it's still there today and developing. So this was in 1978 then that it was accepted by the committee that was looking at all of these proposals. There was a great event in Waseca in 1978 where Russ Fridley was head of the Historical Society, came down, and Rod Searle was there. He's in the legislature. Dean Curtis was there. He was active with this committee. And in the library at the college that the meeting was held, that they made the announcement that it was going to be at Waseca. From that time on, then that's where we developed the master plan for the whole organization, where we're going to go forward from that time.
So tell me a little bit about what development of Farmamerica has looked like then, and how you actually, went through your master plan and made some of those things happen.
Yeah, that was a very interesting time, because here we had a farm, a great farm, highly productive agricultural farm, and presented to Farmamerica by Roy and Marcy Lucken, who wanted to contribute something back to agriculture. And this is the way they were going to do it, is through Farmamerica. And they did it. And so we're certainly indebted to them to help get Farmamerica off and rolling. But you can see at that time then, you had nothing. First thing you had to get was a constitution and bylaws and get it approved as a 501c3 in the state of Minnesota. So that all went on and elected the first board of directors with a 9-member board. Now, Dean Curtis was the chair for the first 4 or 5 years. This is a person from KDHL, and Joe Eustace was on that first board. Lois Krennic was on there. Martin Anixted was on that first board. People like Frank Moon, BOAG instructor over at Hayfield, was on that first board. Eldon Sensky, who was the extension agent down in Freeborn County, was on that first board. Quentin Marsh, who was the Blue Earth County extension agent and went to be a banker in Mankato, was also on that board. So it was a 9-member board. But at this stage of life, there's only 2 of us that are still living. Frank Moon over at Hayfield is the founding board member, still living, and myself. So we've seen a long history here with Farmamerica. But from that time then, once the constitutional bylaws got set up and the board got set up, then it started to look at developments. And one of the first buildings that were brought in was the Meriden Town Hall from the city of Meriden, not too far to the east of us here, and it still sits over here as one of the prime buildings. And then they started to move the structures in until now we have 27 structures on the site that show the history of agriculture. We've done a good job of showing the history of agriculture, and they've been emphasizing that through the years. But the mission of Farmamerica is to tell the story of agriculture, past, present, and future. And so that as time has gone by now, the board has made the decision just this last year in the planning sessions, long and hard battling and talking back and forth to move sharp turn toward modern agriculture, telling the story of modern agriculture. How does that work? Because right now it's moving so fast that people that's not connected with agriculture can't keep up with how fast agriculture is moving forward. And so it's quite a story that has to be told, and we're getting prepared to really hit that hard as we move forward.
So we'll come back to that, but just going back a little bit, we talked a lot about all the different people involved in making Farmamerica a reality. So at that time you were still over at the college, right?
The first 40 acres was identified out here, and also we had access then to the machine shed and the office building in front of that. So that was where the board meetings and things were held right away when we first started Farmamerica. And then the building started to move in here, and then the berm started to get built and some of those things. So there were some dollars that came from the legislature for the development of Farmamerica once it was established. But those dollars for support, for staffing and building that staff up were very meager in the beginning. And so volunteer effort almost all the way, and very difficult and make strong progress. We had people like Oliver Gillespie was our first executive director here at Farmamerica. He came up from Living History Farmers down at Des Moines, Iowa, and had grandiose ideas. And he got on in the committees up in the cities and had the right idea to tie all these people in, but man, he couldn't afford the expenses that he didn't have any dollars to do it with. So that didn't work, and George Brophy became the executive director. George helped build the master plan in the first place. So he knew Farmamerica well and knew what we were trying to do, and he's the one that moved a lot of these buildings in here, the schoolhouse, and the settlement farm, built the pond. Well, actually, pond was built out here, and then the settlement farm was this hovel and log house and some of those things. So there was the history. It was an interesting time. So. But George, when he was the executive director, he could see too that with a budget of $60,000 to operate the institution of this size, it just wasn't possible to maintain a full-time executive director. So that's when he kind of backed away from it and said, that this ain't going to work as far as having a full-time executive director here. And that's when we started to move to part-time one until we got dollars for the visitor center. That's the building we're in right now. That visitor center, a couple of times we had an opportunity to get it, but didn't have the dollars to run it. Finally, we got some agreement with the legislature that if they would build a visitor center here, that they'd also support it to at least $250,000 a year. So that was kind of the understood discussion with the legislators at that time. Only one thing problem with that, legislators can't control what the next legislature does that comes in, and so they never did get up to that $250,000 once they got the visitor center built. Highest they got was $150,000, and then is when the funds in the state got really short. We started to cut everybody, so it kept going down rather than up. That made it very tough job to move the whole structure forward at that time. So we went to part-time executive directors at that time, and we did bring in full-time Kathleen Backer when we built the visitor center, and because of that promise from the legislature that we're going to have the funds to do that. And she moved us forward, but again, we'll put on a staff with a program person, a development person, and the office staff, and a site manager, but not with no funds to handle them. So it made a real problem. Then when we didn't get the funds from the legislature, we had to cut back. At that time, she also recognized that we couldn't afford her either, and so cut back. And then we went to Virgil Christensen for 5 years, and Harlan Holmquist for 5 years, now Jim for 5 years. All three of them great service to Farmamerica. And when we say part-time, we mean part-time. 25% time, that's 10 hours a week. You know what that is? You can't even turn around hardly and run an operation this size of that. So we knew that they contributed an awful lot of volunteer time in order to make this organization move forward. And volunteers have contributed an awful lot of time. We have to credit our volunteers for what we can get done here at Farmamerica and give them an awful lot of credit. We talk about the lifeblood of the organization, that is it. And we try to have recognition programs. Each year we recognize Directors Awards, and Volunteer of the Year businesses, and Volunteer of the Year organizations, Volunteer of the Year youth, and that sort of thing. We do that because they deserve it for all of the time and effort they put into the organization.
Tell me a little bit more about how you personally have been involved, in getting Farmamerica off the ground and running, and even, coming up with the master plan. Tell me, while you were still working at the college, some of the things that you did and what you've put into Farmamerica, even though you might be a little bit modest.
Well, Farmamerica has been our life, both myself and my wife and children too. And when Farmamerica was first coming along, Pioneer Seed Company allowed us to utilize their airplane to visit all of these sites around the country that had similar operations. And Joe Eustace, Dean Curtis, Loris Krennick was on the Board of Regents, also was on that first Board of Directors. Made many of those trips around to get a foundation of how are they operating, how can we best operate, what can we do to really make Farmamerica move forward. So I just continue to work with it, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. If I thought it would work, I wouldn't do it. Jim knows I don't do any work, but I do a lot of things I enjoy doing. this is one of them. And so I stay right in the middle of the operation. I was secretary treasurer to start with, and then as we got through the other people as far as the board chairs, I was elected to the board as chairman of the board in 1992, and have been chairman of the board since that time. So I got a little over those 9 years. That came in 2004. I think the bylaws changed at that time to go to 3-year terms as board members. And there was some thinking that we really needed to get a board that changed through the years. And so we've got a very strong board and have had very strong boards. That's what really makes Farmamerica move forward. I don't talk very fast, but you can't write that fast.
So you said one of the things that the board has done recently is looked at ways that they can talk more about modern ways of farming. So tell me, what are some of the things about modern agriculture that really excite you, and how do you hope to see them represented here at Farmamerica?
Well, what excites me is to tell that whole story of past, present, and future. When I say present, I don't think of anything but modern agriculture as the present we're trying to tell. And that's getting to be such a tremendous growth in agriculture. You look at precision agriculture, you look at biotechnology, you look at renewable energies, or we'll look at all of these water quality and all of these things that are coming into agriculture that are so important that people understand. And it's difficult to understand. They're very complex right now. And so we think that with hands-on interactive displays here at Farmamerica, we can tell that story. And now that we have more land to do it, we can take that land and we can divide it off and have parts that tell different stories at different sites. We can work with business and industry to do this. So we're trying hard to set up contracts with business and industry to help tell that story of agriculture. Of course, they're interested in doing it too, and we are, and to do it accurately and fairly.
Tell me about some of the ways that you've even seen agriculture change during, over the course of your lifetime. Have there been some really big changes? I'm sure there have been.
Tremendous changes, it's almost unbelievable. We had a dairy herd on every farm. We had creamery in every town. Now you have just a few dairy plants and a few dairies that are larger size, and that just changed tremendously. You look at farms, and it's very difficult to have a small farm and try to make enough living to move forward. So the farms have grown larger in size, and you start looking at corn and its production. We talk in the open pollinated time, 30, 40 bushel a acre was great, and then we got hybrid corn. We got up to 120 bushel. Man, we're really going now, And then by biotechnology, some of the others take us up to 200